In 2017, a Netflix social media post said this: "Love is sharing a password." A lot of customers agreed, but now Netflix is falling out of love with password sharing. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and you are listening to Plain English lesson number 548. At Plain English, we help English learners around the globe upgrade their language skills, and we use current events and trending topics to do it. There's one other name you need to know, and that is JR. He is the producer, and he works behind the scenes to bring you the full lesson resources each and every Monday and Thursday. Today's full lesson is at plainenglish.com/548. Coming up today, Netflix is falling out of love with password sharing, and the world's biggest streaming service is planning to crack down on accounts that share passwords with people outside their households. This is part one of a two-part lesson. On Thursday, we'll talk about the pros and cons of how exactly Netflix plans to get freeloaders to pay. In the second half of the lesson, I'll show you how to use the English phrasal verb come up, and we have a quote of the week. Let's dive in. It's hard to imagine this now, but Netflix was once a scrappy upstart company. When I first signed up, Netflix delivered physical DVDs in the mail in red envelopes. It was a new concept in an industry dominated by in-person movie rental businesses like Blockbuster. Having dominated DVD rental, Netflix then moved into streaming. But here too, its success was not guaranteed. When Netflix started streaming, many people's internet connections weren't fast enough to get high-quality video. And there was real concern that video streaming couldn't possibly become popular because the internet providers simply couldn't open up that much data to each household. People honestly thought that Netflix would break the internet. It would pump out more content than internet companies could deliver. Looking back, that seems quaint. Netflix took advantage of its early start and created the streaming video industry, becoming a global behemoth in the process. But just ask Facebook. As a company grows to dominate the globe, it can be harder and harder to grow. Growth for a subscription company can come from three places: attracting new subscribers, keeping existing subscribers for longer, and selling more to the subscribers it already has. Netflix is doing all of those things. Its new low-cost, ad-supported tier is aimed at households without the budget for the full price plan. It's furiously adding new content, including video games, to prevent subscribers from canceling. But the tactic I'll focus on today is getting existing subscribers to pay more. And that means getting them to pay extra for people who share passwords. According to Netflix's terms of service, one account belongs to one household. A household is a group of people living in the same house or apartment as the person who pays the bill. Anyone who does not live in the same house is not part of the household, and according to the terms of service, that person would need their own account. Well, this has never been enforced, and password sharing is rampant. Today, Netflix has 231 million paid accounts, the most subscribers of any video or music streaming service. But there's a catch. Netflix believes that out of those 231 million paid accounts, perhaps 100 million share passwords with people outside their home. That's 40% of users who are technically violating the rules. And that's 100 million people who could maybe, possibly become new paying Netflix customers. And in a world where it's hard to get new subscribers, this is a tempting target. There are a few kinds of password sharing. The first is within families, but with family members living apart. Think of college-age students, for example, who only live at home part-time. Or think of an extended family where one person shares a sibling's account even though they live separately. The other kind of password sharing is casual sharing among friends and contacts. Imagine a group of friends are talking one night and the latest Netflix show comes up in conversation. One person in the group doesn't have Netflix, and that person is curious about the show. She wants to watch the first episode just to see if she likes it. One friend shares a password. She signs in, likes the show, and then never really bothers to get her own subscription. She could get her own account, but why? She's already logged in with a friend's account, so there's no need. And then the final kind of password sharing is more clearly abuse of the system, where one account holder adds many unrelated people with the purpose of minimizing the costs. Well, Netflix has never cracked down on sharing passwords, but the company is planning a global rollout of new password sharing policies. The policies haven't been announced officially, but there are some clues. Netflix has been piloting new password sharing policies in 3 countries: Chile, Costa Rica, and Peru. And Netflix inadvertently uploaded copies of its new policies to its help center in the US before quickly taking them down. The policies aren't final until they are released, but here's what the leaked drafts look like. The new policies will be centered around a primary location. This would presumably be the primary account holder's home. Each account would identify a primary location, and all devices that log into the account must access Netflix from that primary location once every 31 days. If a device accesses Netflix but is not at home, and if that device has not connected at home in the last month, then the account holder gets an email with an authentication code. The account holder has 15 minutes to enter the code to gain access to the device. And that device can access Netflix for 1 week. After a week, you have to repeat the process. Now, notice I said it's the account holder who gets the email, not the person who tries to sign in. So if I'm accessing Netflix from JR's account, it's JR who gets the authentication code, not me. Netflix says it will use IP addresses, device ID numbers, and geolocation data to determine who is in a household and who is not. This is a two-step strategy. The first is to make it inconvenient, but not impossible, to share passwords outside your household. And the second step is to make it easy for the password sharers to get their own paying accounts. Now, this is a major change in the culture and expectations of streaming, which is how so many of us get our entertainment today. And what Netflix does as the market leader could influence what other streaming services do in the future. On Thursday, we'll talk about the delicate balancing act that Netflix faces. It wants to get additional revenue from freeloaders, but it can't infuriate its legitimate users. Did you know that Netflix still delivers DVDs and Blu-ray discs by mail? Did you know they ever did that? Oh yeah, Netflix used to send movies in the mail, and they still do. I think it's only available in the US, but here's how it works. You go online, you create a list of movies and shows you want to see. You subscribe to a certain number of discs out at a time. So let's say you have a 2 DVD plan. They'll send you the first 2 movies from your list in the mail in a red envelope. No case, just the DVD in a white sleeve in a red envelope. You watch the first DVD, you return it in the mail in the same envelope. Then they send you the next one so that you always have 2 DVDs either at home or in the mail. And that's how you work down your list. You watch them, return them, get new ones, etc. And this is how Netflix started. I had this for years before they even started their streaming business. Now, the advantage to this was, and I missed this, but Netflix had everything. Every movie you wanted to see, new or old, Netflix had it because they didn't have to negotiate the rights like they do today. If something is streaming on Netflix today, it means they bought the rights to stream it. And that's why different platforms have different selections of content. Well, that wasn't a problem in the DVD by mail business. They just bought the DVDs in bulk and mailed them out. And this was how Netflix just obliterated the in-store DVD and movie rental business. It was through DVDs by mail because there were no late fees. If you didn't return a movie, you just didn't get the next one. That was punishment enough. Today's expression is extremely useful. You're going to use this all the time now that you know it. It's a phrasal verb, come up, and we use it to talk about when a subject or a topic or a person or a thing becomes part of some type of conversation. This is a little tricky to explain, but imagine you have a conversation with friends, you're out at dinner, whatever. The conversation will have many topics. There will be topics, there will be people, there will be places, all involved in the conversation. And when a topic, when a person, when a place, when a thing becomes part of the conversation, we say it comes up in the conversation. So you're out with friends, but you have one friend who's not there. She canceled at the last minute. Now you're telling her later about the night. You're telling her what you talked about. You say, we talked about lots of stuff. In fact, your name came up in the conversation too. We were curious how your new job is going. Your name came up in the conversation. That means your name became part of the conversation. Someone mentioned it. We talked about it. We talked about how you just got a new job and we're curious how it's going. What else might have come up in a conversation among friends? Well, a recent popular movie might come up in conversation. The new Avatar movie came up in conversation with JR and me recently. I told JR that some movie theaters here in Mexico devoted the whole theater, every screen, all day to showing Avatar 2 when it came out. Now, I'm not a big Avatar fan, but nonetheless, Avatar came up in conversation between JR and me. So that's how you use it with the word conversation. Your name came up in conversation. That new song JR picked last week came up in the conversation. My plans to buy more plants for my apartment came up in conversation. Whatever. Topics, people, places, things. If you talk about them, they come up in the conversation. Now, you can also use this with specific types of conversations. Meetings are a great example. I used to have more meetings than I care to contemplate back when I worked in business consulting. And there were times I wanted a topic to come up in the meeting, and there were definitely times I did not want a topic to come up in the meeting. Well, working in a job like mine was all about balancing priorities. You simply could not do everything you wanted to do or everything other people wanted you to do. It was just too much. Some stuff had to be delayed or simply not done. That was just how it worked. So sometimes you would go into a meeting with somebody and you had done 4 out of 5 things that person wanted you to do. And in that meeting, you wanted to talk about the 4 things you had done. You didn't want to talk about the one thing you hadn't done. So you hope that 5th thing does not come up in the meeting. You hope that the topic does not become part of the meeting. You want to take the whole hour, the whole 30 minutes, whatever, talking about the 4 great things you did. You don't want that last thing to even come up in the meeting. You don't want it to be part of the conversation, part of the meeting. Well, sometimes though, a meeting has an agenda and every topic will come up. The meeting leader is reading from an agenda, so there's no chance he'll forget. If you walk into the meeting late, you might whisper to a colleague, "Has the new project come up yet?" That means, was the new project talked about? Was the new project discussed? And your colleague might whisper back, "No, it hasn't come up yet. That's next on the agenda." It hasn't come up yet means it has not yet been part of this meeting. So you can use this with words like conversation, meeting, discussion, debate, interview, words like that. And quickly, in today's lesson, I was giving an example of how people wind up sharing passwords. And in the example I said, often a movie or a show will come up in conversation among friends, and one person doesn't have Netflix, so that person borrows a password, and 3 years later, that person loves Netflix and is still using the borrowed password, all because a movie came up in conversation one night. It's time for a quote of the week. It's from Nina Bawden, a writer of children's books. She said, "Children often have a much stronger concept of morality than adults." Children often have a much stronger concept of morality, of right and wrong, than adults have, so says Nina Bawden. Well, that is all for Plain English today, lesson number 548. Remember to get the full lesson at plainenglish.com/548. And remember that on Thursday, we'll pick this back up with a closer look at Netflix's new password policies. And if you want to share your opinion about this, about whether you think this is a good idea, about how you'll manage in the new era of stricter passwords, then come join us in the Plain English Facebook group and talk about it there. You can get there by visiting plainenglish.com/Facebook. See you right back here on Thursday.